Good morning, Rice.
Good morning. Oh, very strong lights.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you, sir. And just to start off, could you please tell us a bit about Lazada Group and your operations right now in Southeast Asia?
Well, thank you for taking the time today, and thank you, Rise, for having me here. So I see a couple of familiar faces in the crowd, some ex-Lazadians, so very excited. So my name's Aimone. I'm Italian. I grew up in Belgium and the UK and started my career working in investment banking and McKinsey. Prior to that, I was studying philosophy and history, so nothing to do with business or tech. Sort of came into it because I thought it was a very competitive environment, an exciting environment for a young person to be in. And then in sort of 2012, I got a phone call from Max Bittner, who's our CEO, and kind of the head founder of Lazada, asking to build up his team to go to Southeast Asia and build the, what at the time we thought was the Amazon of Southeast Asia. So, I didn't think twice. Within a week, I sort of quit McKinsey, and I was in Thailand to help build up the team there. And in my time at Lazada, I've kind of built up the team in Thailand and then built our cross-border operations, which is why we're based here in Hong Kong. So, I mean, back in the day, it was a very exciting, right? Because we had a very different view on how to build an e-commerce player. So normally, the traditional model is that you go in markets and you build scale in that market. So yep. US, China, right, and now obviously India. And a lot of the other markets were always perceived as subscale. So, our model was really to go into these different markets in parallel and build up our leadership in all of them so that we could build that scale at a regional level. And so that's what we've been working on over the past 4 years. We've gone from 0 to $1 billion USD of GMV, and obviously are now building up to continuing our e-commerce dominance in Southeast Asia.
How was Lazada formed during those early days? Considering that in each market there are different domestic e-commerce players, how did you manage to set that up over the last few years?
Okay. So the vision that we had was really to enable the brands and the merchants to access Southeast Asia as a one-stop shop, right? And for us to do that, we needed to be the dominant player in each of the markets and leverage the knowledge between them. So yep. It was clear for us that having sort of a one website, one size fits all approach for all the market was not going to work. I mean, if you think about it, it's 6 markets. They're very close physically, but obviously there's a lot of differences, right? So
the 6 markets are?
Philippines, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, and Singapore.
Okay.
Right, so you see religious differences, you also see seasonality, right, yes. Changes. I mean, obviously, if you think from a shopping perspective, in Muslim countries, the pre-Ramadan period of, in Malaysia and Indonesia is the peak, and that happens sort of now, yep. or this month, whereas obviously in Philippines, it's, the pre-Christmas period, that's the peak of everything, right? So, there's a lot of challenges. What we did is we really built teams with co-founders in each of the markets, that built up with the same technology, the same processes, and the same philosophy, but built up the local teams with a local presence in each of the markets. And the idea was really to serve the local ecosystem of merchants and other players, logistics partners, technology partners, to be able to serve the local customers better. And now building that regional dominance has then allowed us to plug in merchants from China, from Europe, from the US, who before were saying, hey, should I go to Mexico? Should I go to Nigeria? Should I go to Indonesia? Right, never knew which one was really at scale. And here they could access all 550 million consumers with basically one portal, one team, one technology platform, one logistics solution.
Among those 6 markets, which would be your largest right now?
So, I mean,
in terms of GMV.
So, I mean, obviously, there's a good correlation between GDP and size of the population. Those are typically the drivers of the market. So, obviously Indonesia is a key market that everyone's looking at. Okay. It's a very exciting market. It's actually the one probably with the toughest competition today. which is a very good thing for the market because it means, right, that things are picking up, that new partners are coming in, that the ecosystem is developing. I think for e-commerce, it's very important that we realize that a lot of players can make the difference.
Yes.
Right? That's one of the great learnings looking at in China, especially how e-commerce has developed, is that you can't do everything yourself, right? Because you'll always have a generalist approach, and you'll always be subscale if you try to go into every niche. So working with tech partners, other distributors, other sorts of partners that help you really scale the business and scale the market is key. So the other market that we've got excellent traction, which is really evolved in its ecosystem, is Thailand. Right? Thailand is a very, very evolved social media ecosystem. Very set of developed players. Excellent assortment. A lot of the distributors there are really advanced. They've been sourcing out of Korea, sourcing out of Europe for a long time. So it's a very exciting market to be in.
As of last year, what were the top 5 goods or merchandise sold by Lazada across all 6 markets?
Yeah. So we started as mostly an electronics retailer.
Okay.
So we actually, just take a step back, we started as a retail company, so we were buying and selling stock, but like the Amazon model.
Yeah.
And then moved into the marketplace model when we felt that we had control over the supply chain. So we're firm believers that the B2C model is what works. So if you think of China, it's the Tmall model, right? Especially in our markets, because we need to build trust, right? And if you think of the business model, the monetization really kicks in when the brands are working with you, right? So if you're a flea market, it's very difficult to be, an IFC. If an IFC, then you can have different models working together. And so, in the beginning, we wanted to control the marketplace because we saw the other players that were doing marketplace tended to be a little bit the flea market approach. Right? And so we started, so when you're buying products and you're building assortment in a new market, electronics is a category that makes sense, right? If you know how to build a good shop in electronics, right? You need Samsung, you need Apple, you need some accessories, some cases. It's quite a simple architecture, right? And so that's what we started with, and is a big part of our business. We launched a lot of the top phones, Android phones in Southeast Asia. So Xiaomi, they did the exclusive launch with us in Indonesia, leveraging our logistics, our payment network. We launched, at some point, Lenovo and Alcatel phones in 6 markets at the same time. And this was a deal that basically took 3-4 weeks to structure. So this was their exclusive launch of those products in Southeast Asia. The other category that's working extremely well is health and beauty. So, particularly in Thailand, where you really see the famous cultural differences. Thailand is a country with, there are big consumers of makeup and beauty products. And we have very strong relationships with some of the key brands like L'Oreal. So we're already able very early on to bring some of the top players, say on Tmall, who are in Southeast Asia and looking to start their online presence there. And this is a category that we really strongly believe in. And now fashion is really the focus of the business. We ramped up our assortment last year, and this is really the year where we're also going to really invest in our technology to make fashion more accessible to consumers, right? Because it's a much more complicated category to navigate on a website. You need a lot more information about the product, the material, the size, the length, right? You've got to deal with more complexity on logistics sides in terms of returns. So it's a category that we're really investing in, and I would say those are the top 3.
One of the keys to cross-border e-commerce nowadays, more important now than before, is having your own logistics infrastructure. What sort of logistics infrastructure has Lazada built over the last few years? So
I think it's a very good point. I think the logistics infrastructure is important not just in cross-border, but also the local market.
Okay.
As some have said, Amazon was lucky to have UPS when they started. We had very little. I mean, in the Philippines, for example, logistics is very tough, right? So not only is the geography extremely complicated, so lots of islands, but also the players are certainly less sophisticated than some of the American counterparts and so on. Which also means that their costs are a little bit higher, the speed is a little bit lower, et cetera, et cetera. So we've taken kind of two approaches. One is to actually build our own footprint with what we call Lazada Express. And there, it's quite a sophisticated logic that's based on consolidating freight and allocating it to different line haul providers and then doing the actual last mile ourselves. There it's really to kind of fill where we see capacity gaps, but also, it helps us, collect money faster with cash on delivery. So it helps us on a whole series of metrics to offer a better service to the customer, but also improve, the way we operate. And the second is really taking a much more technology-based approach, which is really working with the different partners and allocating freight in the way that makes the most sense to them. And so, these two approaches are, really what we've been investing in and we believe is our real differentiator in the market that is otherwise, just leveraging whatever infrastructure is there. Now, going now to the cross-border piece, I think that's one of the most exciting bits to crack is really how we can move products around the world, right? And if you think about it, on the supply side, you've got merchants and brands who, want to access the global market and who, are either struggling, in their market because there's, some complexity and they don't have the cash to export, or, they're squeezed by distributors who really take all the profit for them and almost makes it impossible for them to move, right? And in a market like Southeast Asia, right, it's a big investment for them to move stock to 6 different markets.
Yep.
So being able to offer them a solution where they can sit, in Italy or in Shenzhen, right, or in the States, and leverage their stock there to access Southeast Asia is a huge business opportunity for them, right? It's greenfield. I mean, it's completely new, and it's quite low cost of engagement. For consumers, cross-border is very exciting because, the flip side is if the brands don't come, then you have a lot less choice, but you're spending your time on Instagram, you're spending your time on Facebook, right? You're reading about these things and, you want to buy them and you don't know where to buy them in your local market, right? And so e-commerce really becomes the vehicle through which, this nascent consumer community in Southeast Asia, which is below 30, getting wealthier, urbanizing, using their mobile phone to spend, hours a day on Instagram or Facebook to really start consuming and being that consumer class that, and unleashing the potential of that consumer class.
In April, there was this big deal about this small company from China called Alibaba Group.
Who?
Yeah. Could you please talk us through that deal and how it changes probably the way you pursue your business over the next few years?
So, obviously the deal was a real testament of the work that the Lazada team has done over the past 4 years. So we were incredibly proud of that. It's a real testament of, the quality and the rigor and the diligence. I think more importantly, it really shows an extremely strong signal for Southeast Asia, that it is a regional play, that it is a market that's, really has an incredible potential that just needs to be unlocked now. And so, it's really good news for everyone, right? The local players that are, growing the ecosystem, consumers, and obviously ourselves. In terms of, what this means, Lazada will continue to operate as an independent player with its own brand. The management will stay as is. And we'll continue to pursue our strategic initiatives, which really are the value of Lazada, which are really logistics, payments, and really improving our customer experience. Now, broadly speaking, what are the exciting areas? One is obviously the ability to work together on brands and on the commercial side, on the assortment side.
Right.
So really offering consumers more choice. The secondly is really around the logistics. Obviously there's very exciting opportunities also from a technology side that we can leverage, both, thinking of how we can work together in China and so on, and, obviously also on the payment side. But obviously, if you see around the world who's really, winning the battle are those players that have very advanced technology that enable consumers to engage with the platform in a more sophisticated way, and that's certainly something we can learn, improve, and really drive customer acquisition through, hopefully with as a result of this deal.
Before we run out of time, one last question about mobile commerce. How does that change the game for you? How does that further develop your market base and facilitate cross-border commerce?
So mobile as a whole is a very exciting topic. We're obviously super excited. The first is the actual hardware, the device, right? I mean, it's source of sales, but then it's a way for people to get connected, right? It seems very obvious, but in areas where there's little infrastructure. And it was quite interesting when we launched heavily into mobile. You could see weekend traffic going up because people weren't just using their desktop at the office. All right, you could see areas where we weren't delivering to, getting orders. So that's one of the areas that's obviously very exciting, right? The second is really around the players in the mobile ecosystem. So you think of a player like Line in Thailand, literally came in and took over the market in 3 months. All right, I mean, I can't remember the numbers, but I think today they're at 17, 20 million users. I mean, it happened in a matter of months, right? So being able to work with these players and integrate your platforms with them is extremely powerful as a channel, but also as a means of engagement. Then obviously there's your apps, which are the key way. I mean, if you look at any marketing metric, the apps are kind of more exciting. People spend more time, they scroll more, they're more engaged overall. But then lastly, the mobile also becomes a very interesting device for the ecosystem, right? So we've developed an app for our seller center, which is what our sellers use to operate.
What's it called?
It's just the Seller Center app.
Oh, okay.
Right? And so with this, you can manage your orders, but you can also use it as a pick list, right? So obviously this is for smaller players that are going into e-commerce, right? So it becomes a way for people to enter e-commerce at a very low cost and have better operations, right? We're thinking of ways in which we can work with logistics, right? To get you more engaged with the way you work with your parcel delivery and so on. So it's clearly one of the greatest revolutions I think that we've seen in our time. I mean, we really saw it, kick off a few months after Lazada came in. It was really with the cheaper mobile phones at the 80, 90 US.
Yep.
Right, with the first Lenovo phone, this one coming in, and just the market just picking up from there in a fantastic way. So there's a lot to build out of them.
Sir, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Really appreciate your time.